Good afternoon. Welcome. You are tuned into the Labor Forum here at WRFG 89.3 FM. And what is a really kind of chilly, breezy day here in Atlanta, but at least we're not getting 2 and 3 feet of snow the way our brothers and sisters up the coast are. My name is Diannne Mathiowetz. I'm a retired auto worker, co-host of this program. I want to welcome you to the airwaves here at WRFG, where we talk about the issues important to working people. And we have the people who are engaged in the struggle on the air, and you get a chance to hear directly from them. The opinions that are expressed on this program are not necessarily those of the Board of Directors, staff, or volunteers at WRFG. But this is one of the longest running programs here at WRFG since 1986, when it was established by Gary Washington. And so for week after week after week, for all those years, we have brought the issues, as I said, important to working people to you. I want to say hello to Paul McLennan, another co-host of the Labor Forum, part of the team. He is with the ATU, which is the MARTA Workers Union.
Hey, Diane.
And we have 2 guests in the studio, and we will have 2 more later at 4:30. And they both have important stories to tell in this period of time when we are talking about the issues of police accountability and police violence. We have 2 people who will be addressing that here, and it is an issue that's important to all workers and their families. Before we do that, we'll start with our labor headlines and then our labor history, and then we'll be with our guests. Oh, I have to remind you all, there's so many ways that you can listen to the Labor Forum. Of course, you're listening on your radio. You can listen on your online on your computer at wrfg.org, on your mobile app, and of course the Labor Forum also has a YouTube channel. Some of you may be watching us live at this moment, and others of you can watch the program because it'll be archived and you'll be able to watch it starting tomorrow. So here we go, labor headlines for January 26, 2015. Thailand is the 3rd largest exporter of fish and fishery products in the world, with more than $8 billion in sales. In order to meet the demand for cheap seafood and with reduced fishing stocks, Thai companies have violated conservation and environmental laws, but it is their exploitation of migrant workers in particular that is being condemned by labor and human rights groups. A number of reports have been released detailing extreme violations of labor laws, including human trafficking and slavery aboard Thai fishing vessels. Workers are being recruited through trickery, false promises, or even kidnapped from countries such as Myanmar, known formerly as Burma, and Cambodia, to crew on boats for months, even years at a time. Their identification papers are taken from them. They are forced to work up to 20 hours a day under threat of beatings and even death, with little or no pay. They live in unsanitary, overcrowded spaces on these fishing boats with little proper food. Because of a labor shortage in Thailand to meet the needs of the fishing industry, the government recently proposed to use prisoners on fishing vessels, but international outrage forced the idea to be abandoned. Consumers in the U.S. should know that Thai Union, the world's largest canned tuna company, owner of Chicken of the Sea, recently bought Bumblebee, the 2 brands most plentiful in our grocery shelves. It takes us to pause, wondering what are the conditions of the workers who brought that tuna to our plates. And keeping up with legal developments concerning McDonald's, the latest news comes from Virginia, where former employees claimed that a dozen or more black workers from 3 stores were simultaneously fired because they didn't, quote, fit the profile management wanted. In other words, the store employees were black, apparently too black. The replacements hired were white. The federal civil lawsuit against the company alleges a, quote, widespread pattern of racial and sexual discrimination and harassment at these stores. And so the saga of McDonald's making news on the Labor Forum continues. And lastly, here in Georgia, the most recent attack to come out of the Deal administration is a plan to cut health insurance for about 11,500 bus drivers and other school employees, such as cafeteria workers, who work less than 30 hours a week. For many rural workers, having health insurance was the major incentive to stay on a job that requires early hours, a split shift, and low pay. The state health benefits plan covers more than 600,000 teachers and other state workers, along with retirees and dependents. These same workers were targeted last year by the General Assembly to be ineligible for unemployment compensation during school breaks and summer vacation. That law went into effect January 1st of this year. Listeners can be sure that a struggle will be mounted to stop passage of this proposal to save money on the backs of already low-wage school workers. And those are our labor headlines for today, January 26th. And we'll move right away to Paul with his This Week in Labor History.
Thanks, Diane. On January 25th, 1851, Sojourner Truth, a prominent abolitionist and women's rights organizer and activist, gave her best-known speech, "Ain't I a Woman?" at a Black Women's Rights Convention in Ohio. She became one of the most powerful advocates for human rights in the 19th century. Born a slave in rural New York State in 1797, her father, James Baumfree, was a slave captured in modern-day Ghana. Her mother, Elizabeth, was the daughter of slaves from Guinea. Originally, her name was Isabella, and her first spoken language was Dutch. Separated from her family at age 9, she was sold several times before ending up on the farm of John and Sally Dumont. As was the case for most slaves in the rural North, Isabella lived isolated from other African Americans, and she suffered physical and sexual abuse at the hands of her masters. Around 1815, she fell in love with a fellow slave named Robert, but they were forced apart by Robert's master. Isabella was instead forced to marry a slave named Thomas, with whom she had 5 children. In 1827, after her master failed to honor his promise to free her or to uphold the New York anti-slavery law of 1827, Isabella ran away, or as she later informed her master, "I did not run away, I walked away by daylight." She moved to New York City, worked as a domestic, became involved in reform, embraced evangelical religion, started her street corner preaching career, and eventually joined a utopian community. A mystic, Isabella acquired a wide knowledge of the Bible. In this experience, she was like countless African Americans who called on the supernatural for the power to survive injustice and oppression. She emerged in the 1840s in Massachusetts, working among the abolitionists. A popular platform figure, she told stories and sang gospel songs that instructed and entertained. Adopting the name Sojourner Truth in 1843, she became a wandering orator. In the mid-1850s, she settled in Battle Creek, Michigan, her base of operations for the rest of her life. Truth was 6 feet tall, blessed with a powerful voice, and driven by deep religious conviction. She traveled constantly, powerfully speaking and singing at meetings all over the Northeast and Midwest, often with Frederick Douglass. In 1850, she published an account of her life, Narrative of Sojourner Truth. Sojourner's best-known speech, entitled "Ain't I a Woman?" was given in Akron, Ohio in 1851 at the Women's Rights Convention. Her speech made a great impact at the convention and has endured as a classic expression of women's rights. In her speech, she said, "That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into carriages or over mud puddles or gives me any best place, and ain't I a woman? Look at me, look at my arm. I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns, and no man could head me, and ain't I a woman? I could work as much and eat as much as a man when I could get it, and bear the lash as well, and ain't I a woman? I have borne 5 children and seen most all sold off to slavery, and when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me, and ain't I a woman?" As historian Nell Painter puts it, at a time when most Americans thought of slaves as male and women as white, Sojourner Truth embodied a fact that still bears repeating. Among blacks are women. Among the women there are blacks. With the start of the Civil War, she helped to recruit black troops for the Union Army and volunteered by bringing them food and clothes. She became increasingly involved in the issue of women's suffrage, but broke with leaders Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton when Stanton stated that she would not support the black vote if women were not also granted the right. The causes she sponsored were broad and varied, including women's equality, prison reform, an end to the death penalty, and property rights. Sojourner Truth also fought for land grants to resettle freed slaves and suggested the idea of a Negro state in the West. She saw the 1879 exodus to Kansas as part of God's divine plan. Her last campaign was fought to secure land in Kansas and Missouri for freed slaves. She died in 1883 and was buried in Battle Creek, Michigan. Her funeral was the largest that town had ever seen, testimony to her legacy of feminism and racial equality that still resonates today.
I have to say, I have a button that has that very famous kind of line graphic with her arm up, showing that she's got muscle, and with the phrase "Any and I a woman." It was a quite powerful symbol during the years of the women's liberation movement and the black liberation movement. All right, we will now take a short break, and we'll be right back with our guests in the studio, Michele Swan and Jackie Rodriguez. Stay tuned. You are listening to the Labor Forum here on WRFG 89.3 FM. You can hear on that little clip, that is the voice of Iban Dooley, who was a major player here at WRFG in both establishing the station as was he mentioned, as an independent, progressive source of news and quality music. We are today having a tribute to him throughout the day, with a special this afternoon from 6 to 8, where many of his friends and co-workers, people, poets and others who knew him well, will be speaking about his contributions, not just to WFG, but to the community here in Atlanta and really the country. So I do encourage you to tune in then. But right now we're going to turn to our two guests who are in the studio here on the Labor Forum. We want to welcome Michele Swan and Jackie Rodriguez. Both of them are active with Occupy Our Homes Atlanta. Michele is here because she has just undergone not just weeks, but months and months of a really difficult situation, but it culminated in a most traumatic experience with the Henry County Police just a couple of days ago. And this is, again, as you know, Occupy Our Homes has been actively working with homeowners who have, through a variety of reasons, come into dispute, we'll call it a dispute, with mortgage companies and others about being able to keep their homes. So hi, Michele, welcome to WRFG.
Hi, thank you.
All right, so maybe you could, if you can, in a real few minutes, try to tell people who are listening exactly how it is that 20 Henry County cops came and evicted you out of your house.
First I want to say it was a very traumatic experience, but it was happened a couple of weeks ago. I was evicted illegally from my home, and a property management company actually had brought my home. And I've been trying to get in contact with them for weeks and weeks by phone call, emails, Twitter, any type of form of communication. Eventually what they did was come to my house on Thursday with about 20 to 25 police officers with a warrant for my arrest, and they wanted me to be evicted again from their place, which I thought after me being there for a couple of weeks they would have to re-evict me. And that's not what the case that happened. They came there forcefully and with a SWAT team, came into the house, told everyone to come out the house, and just pretty much didn't respect me as a human being. I felt like it was forcefully, it was just something as simple as coming to me, talking to me with the property management company. There was no need for 20 a SWAT team and 20 police officers to surround my home. I felt it was a waste of resources in Henry County.
All right, so you were actually charged, you were arrested,
I was arrested.
taken away.
Taken away.
To the jail.
Yes.
And what did they charge you with?
They
And then
charged-
what? And then they kept you in jail for many.
Hours, a couple, maybe like 36 hours they kept me in jail for. They arrested me and they charged me with 3 felonies actually, with trespassing, force by taking, and burglary of my home. And I mean, it's the first time I've ever really got in trouble, so it's a scary experience. But it's actually a learning experience also, because it gives me a voice on what's really going on out there, and that only could happen to only me. It could happen to a lot of other people, you know, which I don't think is the way how it was handled. I don't think it was fair. I don't think they, you know, the property management company actually cared about me being a homeowner or even resolving the issue of what's really going on.
I wanted to bring Jackie Rodriguez in. Jackie is a staff person. I guess is that your correct title now? With Occupy Our Homes Atlanta, and you spent a lot of time with Michele at her home. There was, as we should say, this is a kind of direct action that is being taken to essentially force mortgage companies and others who somehow, whether by hook or by crook, end up with people's homes, to negotiate with them and enable them to get back into their homes and have it under their legal possession. So Jackie, of all the many cases that you've worked on, can you maybe offer something as well about this particular one with Michele? Because 20 cops coming out is comparable maybe a little bit to Mark Harris's case, who we also have had on the program.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think one thing that's really sets Michele's case apart is that this was not treated as an act of civil disobedience. The occupation of her home was not treated as a direct action. She was dragged out like a criminal charged with multiple felonies. In the case of, you know, Mark Harris and in other campaigns that we have done, people have been arrested, but they have been arrested and given the treatment that we normally see when people are being arrested for a cause. You know, in Michele's case, the harassment by the Henry County Sheriff's Department actually started the day before her arrest. Numerous officers had come to the house. There were about 15 people in the home at the time. They must have decided that was not an advantageous time to take the house, and instead they had officers flying up and down her street, patrolling her development, and they waited until they saw that there were only 4 or 5 people left in the house before they sent an officer in they sent a detective in actually under the guise of speaking with Michele about a burglary that had happened at the home when all of the items of value were removed from the house. And he entered the home under the pretense of trying to resolve that issue. He informed us at that time that American Residential, who is the investment company who bought the property, had in fact entered the home and removed all of the items supposedly for quote-unquote safekeeping, which they have also not communicated with us at all to return Michele's items, so it's pretty clear that that was just another tactic to terrorize her. And during the course of that conversation, over 20 officers in tactical gear surrounded the house, and despite everybody immediately complying with the order to vacate, Michele was arrested and charged with 3 felony counts in the driveway of the home.
Well, let me ask both of you. The media wants to make it seem as though the housing crisis, where literally millions of people in this country lost their homes from, you know, this was during the so-called Great Recession, to all kinds of what has been proven to be all kinds of fraudulent behavior on the part of banks, mortgage companies and others, the robo-signing, just the losing of paperwork over and over, the not paying attention to the attempts to use a federal program to resolve issues where they could keep their homes. And we have seen from the statistics that this is what has caused literally black families for the most part in the United States to have totally lost all wealth. They were down to something like $11,000 now as the average wealth of black families in the United States. And we saw that all those houses became part of a very big profit-making scheme by many different kinds of realtors and mortgage companies and other hedge funds, etc. So, but the papers keeps trying to tell us that it's really hardly happening anymore. I want the two of you to address this because a case as severe as 20 police officers makes it appear that, in fact, this problem maybe not on the front pages anymore, but is certainly something that was devastating to you.
Yeah, I mean, the mortgage company actually went, and let me give you a backtrack a little bit. I went through a very difficult divorce, and I was actually had exclusive rights to my home. The mortgage company refused to talk to me because my name was not on the mortgage statement. They refused to even listen to me. They refused to even acknowledge that the judge gave me this property in a divorce. All I had to do was refinance with them and just take over the home and the payments. They didn't want to hear that. They didn't care about the divorce decree. They didn't care that a judge signed off on it. And what they did was just simply just sell my house to ARP, a property management company, under courthouse steps. So, it goes back to, them not listening to the court order and not even respecting me as a minority, as a woman, as somebody who could actually pay my mortgage. Because had this been a simple fact of communication, because I didn't go to just them one time, I went to them numerous of times to take over this mortgage so that we wouldn't have to come to this point. Now that we are at this point, it's just, how do we resolve this now? Because this is not probably, I'm not the only person that this is happening to. It's been probably going over and over. But now it's just, I want to make a difference now and be able to be heard because it's not fair.
And this is not only happening to just homeowners like Michele, this is really indicative of the way that we're seeing the fight change. So while statistically foreclosures are going down, we're kind of seeing the same thing in the statistics reflected in the campaigns that are coming into UHA. So single family homeowners like Michele, while those cases are going down, we're seeing an exponential rise in rental campaigns, people who are having problems with their landlords, because what Wall Street has done, and this is true of American Residential, the company with whom Michele is having the problem, what Wall Street has done is found a way to capitalize on the foreclosure crisis. They are investing in these single family homes, and they're securitizing the deeds so that they can be traded on Wall Street, which is the exact same thing that put us into this crisis to begin with. So not only did Wall Street profit and get bailed out from creating the first crisis, now they're taking those funds and figuring out another way to profit off of the misery that they created. And it's really something that Occupy Our Homes has struggled with, as you said, Diannne. It's not something that's in the front page. It's not as sexy as it was when the Occupy movement was going on. But this is something that is not only very much still happening to people like Michele, but it's also leading to growth for problems with people who are having issues with rentals. We're seeing companies like Blackstone, on a smaller level, American Residential, who are coming into neighborhoods, buying up all of these houses, and instead of having Michele stay in her home, in a house that she's lived in and owned since 2003, in a community that she wants to work in and raise her children in and invest in, they would rather lease out the house, not invest in the community, because at the end of the day, that makes them more money.
Well, thank you both so much for coming in. If there's something real quick that you could let our listeners know about how to stay engaged in this, find out more. If there's anybody out there who's having issues, wants to talk to Occupy Our Homes Atlanta, you have a few minutes.
Absolutely. So you can follow Michele's campaign on social media. We're using the hashtag Justice4 Michele with 1 L. You can find us at Occupy Our Homes ATL on Twitter and Facebook. We also meet every Thursday from 7 to 9 p.m. Our next member meeting is going to be February 5th. The first Thursday of every month is our general meeting and potluck. We welcome people of all ages, children, anyone to come down, find out more about the work of Occupy Our Homes, or to get help with their own struggle. And starting in February, we're actually at a new location, 75 Marietta Street. And if you're not on social media, you can always visit us online at occupyourhomesatl.org.
I want to thank both of you for coming in.
Thank you so much, Diannne.
We wish you the best, and hope that this gets resolved so that you and your kids can get back into your house.
Yes, thank you.
So we are ready to go into our next interview with Delisa Davis. But first, still another message from WRFG important to hear.
Thank you.